Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am glad you're able to watch this broadcast of the video coming to you right now. Did you realize that as early as 53 years ago that you all probably wouldn't be watching it together in the same room, let alone having me teach this subject to you? Well, as you all being scholars out of the country, I figured this to be the most opportune time to teach you a little bit more about American history, just so you have a better understanding of where we've come from and how we have grown as a nation to stay a world superpower. So my name is Ken Buffer. I will be covering with you segregation in America and how we have come past it, as well as some of the things I believe took part in having it come to an end. So with that, we're going to be covering today the induction of segregation, be it how it actually came about. From there, we're going to go into the civil rights movement and what that had to do with helping us get from pretty much slavery all the way through. We got to where slavery's ended. Civil rights movement has began after that, throughout that time, and what the key players have done to help us with that. Then finally, where we'll discuss money, as far as what object, as far as the object of money, that is, what that had to do with the end of segregation. And of course, after that, we're going to be going into the conclusion, and I'll be doing a little recap as far as what we went over to make sure everybody has a clear understanding, has a little bit better knowledge as far as a little bit of the history of America. So slavery ended in America about 1865 with the Emancipation Proclamation. It ended, but it didn't really end. There was still a lot of things happening that weren't supposed to happen, but it did end on paper. So segregation pretty much took place from the 1870s all the way up until 1964. Now, there was a proclamation making it to where state schools weren't supposed to have any segregation at all, and that was made in 1954, except the majority of the schools in the states weren't following that until after 1964. So it took 10 years from the time it was actually placed on paper for the country to actually go through and start recognizing that this is the new law now. We have to move through that. If you notice, I said from 1870 to 1964. That means we had to get a lot of the old thinking that we had from people who grew up around having slaves and looking at people as objects rather as less than them, rather than actual people who were equals with them. So moving past that took some time. That's why there's such a long time frame with that. Moving along into the civil rights movement, or rather starting with a couple of the key players within it. Very popular names. We have Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and we have Malcolm X. Two great men stood on completely different sides of the same issue. They both believed that it was time for equal human rights for all. The difference between the two is it seemed as though Dr. Martin Luther King looked at everything as we should do everything non-violently, which made him seem as kind of a pushover, whereas Malcolm X was more the by enemies necessary type. Now, both men highly respected each other, but they did butt heads on the issue. They did not agree that each other's method was the best method about going about it. So the best method to go about handling this. With that, you had people on both sides. You had people who would march with Dr. King. You had people who would march with Malcolm X, attend his speeches. People who would attend Dr. King's speeches. People were all wanted the same thing, but didn't know which was the best way to go about doing it. So during the civil rights movement, a lot of people banded together, not just people of color, not just black people, but all people. They would see things as far as the injustices that were happening, the racial ones. As far as media took a big part in this, taking pictures of police turning hoses on innocent protesters, peaceful protesters, sending dogs out on people, people who just wanted to try to make it to where we could have equal rights in that. Another key player I did not mention previously was Rosa Parks, another famous lady who did not want to give up her seat on the bus because she felt it was not right. Just because the bus was full to capacity and she was a colored woman, why would she have to give her seat up when she was there first? She was arrested for that, but that also showed that she had the backbone as far as this is not right. We are people too. I am a person as well, and we need to move past this. She didn't ask for anything more. She didn't come on to it and have someone else move. She just wanted her fair share as why should she move? Moving on from the civil rights movement, we come to the money issue. Now, money doesn't seem like it would be something that kind of moved us past and getting past segregation, but I believe it actually played one of the biggest parts in the whole scenario. The reason I believe this is that there is Wall Street, correct? We all know Wall Street, and if you don't know Wall Street, it's actually an international and national as well trading organization. We had a black Wall Street, as far as it was a segregated one for colored people. Back in 1961, called the riots of Tulsa, it was actually destroyed. They went through, a bunch of racist activists went through and actually destroyed it. And apologies, I think a moment ago I said 61. I meant 1921 is when it was gone through and it was destroyed. So it was destroyed by a bunch of upset people who were mad that colored people were making their own money. So they went ahead and they destroyed it. They wanted them to spend their money with them. They didn't want the colored people to prosper. The racially in charge people wanted them to spend their money only with them. Which brings me to my next point. In 1954, the United States government actually created a video for white business owners entitled The Secret of Selling to the Negro. Now, this entire video was trying to get rid of all of the bad news and stereotypes that were given about black shoppers and letting everyone know that, hey, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry you're not getting in on because of all the things you think you know. So opening the doors to black people to be able to sell to them would take a big as far as increase into the economy. Now, if we're all segregated, you would not be able to sell to them. They could not come to your store and spend their money. So you have to make sure they are welcome to come to your store and spend their money with you. And then after that was done, there was no more need for a Black Wall Street because now the people of color were able to come in and actually spend money where everyone else could. They could come in and actually get high quality material that they wanted to buy because they felt as though they deserved it. And it actually even goes into the video, the mindset of a lot of the African Americans, colored people, black people, whatever the correct terminology is for today, going through there. In that time frame, the correct terminology was Negro, and that's the word that they used throughout the video to describe what exactly the buying habits were for them and how to get them to purchase from your store. With that, it brings me to the conclusion. We talked about the induction of segregation, how it went from the 1870s all the way through 1964. Talked about the civil rights movement and a few key players being Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Rosa Parks. Even after that, leading into the money and how that took a big play as far as spending money with the white business owners in order to increase the economy as a whole in the United States. At this point, if you do have any questions, I am available to be reached, and my contact information is below the video in the comment section. Thank you very much. Have a great day.